All right, so it is 7 o'clock on Monday, October 17th, 2022, and I'll call the meeting to order. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Okay, seeing Councillor Clark. Okay, and that one is item number 4. Councillor Clark is declaring a conflict on that one. All right. And before we get into the minutes of the previous meeting, I just want to remind everybody that this week is local government week. And it's great to see a lot of people in the gallery tonight. I believe I'm counting how many people. 7 people. That's a record over the last few years because we've been virtual and online, and it's great to see the gallery has a few more people out there. And the people watching live on YouTube or afterwards, just take a look online, go to our website to see all the services that we provide here in Adelaide Metcalfe and all the different local services that our local governments do. And this week, I'm always reminded of the time that we held a council meeting at the Adelaide WG McDonald School. That was, I believe, 2 terms ago or last term of council. That was very fun and interesting, and I hope that's something that maybe the next term of council will start doing as well. It's just hard to do that every 4 years because it is election time, which is a great segue to remind everybody to vote between now and October 24th at 8 p.m. With that, I will ask Coulter if you just push your button there so we can see everybody. So on the main screen, you can see council around front, but out the back row, we have Johnny Pereira, our treasurer, and we have Coulter Cahill, our public works manager, and we need to get him a name tag. I noticed. Okay. All righty. So we have the minutes of our previous meeting, and those are October 3rd, 2022. Mover and seconder for those. Okay, Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Brody, all those in favor, and that is carried. So we'll go into our public meeting. So we need to have a motion from council that council convene into a public meeting pursuant to section 12 of the Development Charges Act 1997 as amended at 7:03. Okay, Councillor Clark and Deputy Mayor Hendricks, all those in favor, and that's carried. All right, so I will hand this over to Johnny Pereira, our treasurer, to introduce Brian from Watsons and Associates. Johnny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the council, we've been working on our development charge background study for quite some time now, working with the team at Watson and Associates. Byron has been the lead on this project and has gone quite well. But I'll turn it over to Byron Tan. He'll be presenting the development charge background study.
Yeah, thank you very much, Johnny. Just share my screen here.
Perfect.
And everyone can see my presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, staff, and the public. So this evening, as Johnny had mentioned, is a mandatory public meeting under the Development Charges Act. We're here today to present the findings of the development charge study process, and as well as to gain any input from the members of the public. I'd just like to note that as today is a public meeting, no decision needs to be made. After tonight's meeting. Yep.
Sorry, Byron. We're just getting some feedback through the speaker, and we're not sure if it's you or the speaker. It sounded great when you first started talking, and then it just sounded kind of staticky there.
Okay. No, let me know.
Since microphone's on.
Hey, Byron, any chance it could be on your end, or is everything pretty normal over there?
Yeah, no, I just had another public meeting earlier today, and there was no issues.
That sounds good.
Okay, right now you sound great. Don't move.
I shall not move.
Okay, go for it.
All right. So as I said, tonight is a public meeting under the Development Charges Act. There is no decision to be made today. It is only for the public and council to receive the information, receive any input, and we will be back to council with the consideration of the bylaw in a few weeks' time. So let me just go on to the next slide. So as I said, again, the public meeting is mandatory to the Development Charges Act. We'll go over the study process and timelines, a quick overview of the DC process, and then we'll provide you with the proposed policies, the charges, and then we can open the floor, through the clerk, with any questions, whether it be through council or from the public. So just a quick overview. So as I said, the public meeting, it is to provide the DC information and receive it from the public. As I said, it's a mandatory public meeting. And this, prior to the council's consideration of the bylaw, the background study needed to be published on the website for a minimum of 60 days prior to the consideration of the bylaw. And through this process, we have met those timelines as we release the study in early September. So just an overview of the process and timelines. We started the study and engaged with staff in the fall of 2021. So it has been a long time coming. However, given that it is, your first DC that you are considering, there were a lot of information and, different aspects that needed to be considered. So, that was all done throughout the past year. We released the background study on September 8th of, on your website in order to conform to that 60-day time period, which you'll see on item 4. And we're here today, as I said, on October 17th for the public meeting at council. And as I said, we'll be back on November 7th, so a few weeks from now, for council to consider the bylaw. So just for those unfamiliar with development charges, it is not mandatory under the development charges for a municipality to have DCs. However, if you do elect to impose them, they're to assist in recovering the capital costs associated with residential and non-residential development within the municipality. So as you can see there, the key word here is capital costs. We cannot recover for any operating items. And the capital really is in addition to what you would normally require a developer to construct on your behalf. So, if a developer is creating a subdivision, they may be constructing the internal roads, sidewalks, maybe water mains, sewer mains, etc. So the development charges are really to help recover for infrastructure that would benefit the township as a whole. So whether that's, arterial roads, large collector roads, or, any type of infrastructure that would service the whole municipality. And as I said, municipalities are empowered to impose these charges under the Development Charges Act. It's not mandatory. You haven't had one before. However, if you do choose to impose one, you would be able to, it would assist you in collecting for your capital infrastructure that's related to growth. So there are some recent changes to the Development Charges Act, but prior to this, just before I get into the slide, I'd just like to just provide a quick background to the Development Charges Act. It's not new. It's actually been around since the mid-1950s in the form of lot levies under the Planning Act. And the first iteration of the Development Charge Act after the lot levies actually came in 1989. So that was the first iteration of how the Development Charge Act would outline what capital you can recover for. Fast forward to 1997, which is the current iteration of the Development Charges Act. That's where you're seeing different services that are now being eligible for collections. Different policies, procedures. As you can see today, we have to have a mandatory public meeting. All of that was formulated as part of the 1997 Act. And now, fast forward to this slide that you're seeing on the screen, there were recent legislation that actually amended that Development Charge Act. And I'm going to refer to the bills for the most part, as the act names are, a little bit lengthy in words. But the first one, as you can see, back in 2019 was Bill 108. And what this bill provided for was it allowed the Development Charge Act the Development Charge bylaw to require that a payment provision based on the timing be provided for developments. So in terms of rental housing or institutional, if you were a development with that type of infrastructure that you're trying to build, you would be allowed to pay your DCs over 6 years. And with respect to the nonprofit housing, the province actually allowed the payments to be over 21 payments, so 20 years. So it is a lot more work in terms of bookkeeping, but it is now being extended to be allowed to have these extended payment provisions. As well, the second portion of that clause was part of what's called a DC rate freeze. And that's really with respect to site plan and zoning bylaw amendments. So if a developer were to come and provide an application for a site plan or a zoning bylaw amendment, whatever DCs are in effect, they should be those DCs are frozen for 2 years. And why that is significant is because development charges can be indexed every year, with inflation, or if you have years where you're updating the DC. So in your case, you have none right now, but fast forward 5 years from now where you have to update because the bylaw only has a life of 5 years. If the charges were to go up significantly or change, and they applied for a rate freeze, year 5 of this current bylaw, then the rates in effect now would be allowed for them to be paid for that development. And then finally, you are allowed to apply interest to these payments. So if there is a rate freeze or timing of payment, you are allowed to include interest, which we have included provisions as part of your draft bylaw, which we'll talk about later. And then the next bill, Bill 138, all this did was just do a minor change to Bill 108 by removing installment payments for commercial and industrial developments. So Bill 108 initially had these types of development as an extended payment period. However, Bill 138 removed that. And then Bill 197 was the largest change to the Development Charge Act recently. It actually specifies what the DC eligible services can be collected by a municipality. Historically, the Development Charge Act actually listed what you couldn't collect for, so it was more of a negative connotation. Now they've changed it so that they list exactly what you are allowed to collect for. So a little bit of a change in language, but it does impact how a bylaw can be structured. As well, there's some minor changes with these things called a class of service. So that's just something where we can group certain categories into one service if we wish. It doesn't really pertain for Adelaide Metcalfe, so I wouldn't worry about it. And then as well, there is a removal of the 10% mandatory deduction. So this wouldn't have affected you because you didn't have a DC before, but historically for municipalities with a development charge, if we were to, do the calculations and actually have a charge at the ending balance, we would have to actually net off another 10%. And that's one way to make sure the municipalities are, putting in their fair share of the costs, which would have to be funded from other sources, such as your taxes, user fees, rates, etc., or reserves and reserve funds. But now they've gone away and removed that. So there is no more 10% deduction. So any items that we are proposing for inclusion for capital as part of your study is, for the most part, 100% growth related. And then finally, Bill 213. This just came in at the end of 2020. And what this is it just provided a mandatory exemption for developments with respect to universities. So unless you have a university that's developing on your lands, any buildings that are constructed as part of their land fabric would actually be exempt from your development charges. So just a quick overview. As I said, Bill 197 outlined the list of DC eligible services. So here's the 20 that you're seeing on the screen. So we have our, the usual water, wastewater, storm services related to a highway, which is your roads. And for the most part, the roads related facilities such as public works or vehicles. And then, there's also other ones such as your transit, fire protection, parks and recreation, etc. So we have, worked with staff, and we were able to put together the development charge study for certain services that you wish to recover for, and that's presented on a future slide. Just an overview of the DC methodology. Again, seeing that it is a new item for the township. What the DC is trying to do is it requires us to look at the amount, type, and location of growth. So at first we have to do a growth forecast. And once that growth forecast is determined, then we would take a look and work with staff on the servicing needs to accommodate that growth. So in this case, that's where we now look at the specific services, whether it's roads, parks and rec, etc. Line 3 says then from there, we then identify the capital cost to meet those services. So now we know that we do have to provide roads. Number 3 says what type of roads. Are they going to be, upgrades from tar and chip to asphalt? Are we building new roads? Are we building new libraries, etc. Once we provide the capital costs, projects, then we would deduct the grants, subsidies, and any other contributions. Again, if you're getting monies from other sources or other levels of government, you don't want to double dip in terms of what you can collect for DCs. So we would subtract that out. The benefit to existing development, what that means is if you are to construct a new facility, what portion of that facility is actually benefiting the existing people, the existing residents and businesses in the township, relative to how is it going to benefit the new development. So we have to make that distinction and allocation. There is this amount in excess of the 10-year service standard calcs. So what that is as part of the development charge study, we have to take a look at your 10-year historical level of service, and what you provided in the past can be no higher than what you want to provide in the future, can be no higher than the average that you've provided in the last 10 years. So there is a mathematical equation in there that we have to make sure that we're conforming to. And then lastly is the DC reserve funds, which you don't have, but if you did have it from one bylaw to the next, we would have to reconcile any DC reserve money that you have collected, and we would net that off of the new capital that was proposed to be recovered for. After that, we would get the net cost, which is allocated between residential and non-residential development. And then from there, once we divide the cost between the two different categories, then we would divide it by the total assumed growth between the two. So in terms of residential, it's how many people or how many homes. And then in terms of non-residential, it's typically on a per square foot or per employee basis. And to simplify that, so essentially, all of that information is really simplified on this page, where at the end of the day, our numerator, again, is the cost of the infrastructure that you're trying to recover for to accommodate growth. And then we would divide it, like I said, with the growth forecast, so your residential and non-residential growth. And, the information that we would get from that is then a development charge on a per unit basis, which we typically separate out between different unit types, such as single detached homes, townhomes or apartments. And then for the non-residential, we typically look at it from a per square foot basis. With this graph, we just wanted to illustrate that, there is no magic with development charges and to service new growth. All it is if you have new servicing that you need in order to provide for the new development. If you don't have development charges, you're picking it up from rates, taxes, and reserves, which is currently what you're doing as you do not have a development charge. Having that development charge then just allows you to have that revenue stream from another category without increasing your tax rates or reserves, or draining any of your reserves or reserve funds, or utilizing any other form of rates or user fees. Now, there are some mandatory exemptions for the development charges. So these are items that cannot be applied towards. So the first one is the upper and lower tier governments and school boards. So, given that the upper tier, they are higher on the, there is a quid pro quo between the upper tier and the lower tier. So if Middlesex had a charge, they wouldn't charge you. Likewise, you wouldn't charge them if they built a building. And then with the school boards, they're typically on the provincial side. So since they're higher up on the food chain, you can't charge them a DC if they were to construct a building. For industrial buildings, if you do have any industrial expansions, an industrial building can expand up to 50% of their footprint without having to pay a development charge. So that's actually provided for under the Development Charges Act. But anything over that would be subject.
Hey, Byron.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's it's really bad on this end, and I have IT on the line where they're going to try to make a change really quick
Okay.
and see if we can fix this challenge.
No, sounds good.
Okay, so just hang tight for a sec. Sorry. Hey, Byron, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, hold on.
Oh, now I'm getting feedback on my end too.
Aaron Besh, do you want to just unmute yourself and see what you sound like when you talk?
Sure. How does it sound?
So
That
keep
sounds like it's
talking.
going through the TV. Tell us the
Lovely
story.
weather we're having outside, and
Okay, Byron, your turn.
And the weather here has actually been raining all day. So
All right, that sounds really good. Yeah. Okay, continue on, Byron.
okay. Would you like me just to pick up where I left off?
Yes.
Okay. So as I said, with the industrial expansions, as per the Development Charge Act, they are allowed to expand up to 50% without paying a DC. Anything over that then would be subject to a development charge. However, there has been some case law that draws the line, and if you structure your bylaw in such a way, you can prevent an abuse of this clause, where an industrial building may come in, do a 50% expansion, come back the following year or two, do another 50%, and get an exemption in perpetuity. So we have set it up in a way that it is only a one-time expansion credit. You are allowed to expand your single detached home and add up to 2 apartments, as long as you don't double the size of the home and you do not have to pay a DC. And if you are a medium or high density, which is more of a townhouse or apartment, you're allowed to add 1 additional unit to the building and not have to pay a development charge as well. And something that is new as part of Bill 108, any new dwelling units, so new construction, are allowed to add an additional unit or ancillary dwelling to the build as it's being constructed without having to pay a DC. So the items up right above it, those actually deal with existing homes. This new clause that you're seeing, the second last bullet, is actually with respect to new homes that want to add an intensification to it. And then finally, the last bullet there is just, as I mentioned earlier, the development of lands intended for use by a university that receives funds from, the government. So if there is any development on the university lands, it would be exempt. So those are the mandatory discretions. Council are allowed to provide any discretionary exemptions, as part of their bylaw to make it a, made in that municipality. So in addition to the mandatory that must be observed, council may elect to reduce in part or whole the DC for either a type of development or a class of development. So, for a type, that could be a church. So if you'd like, you can exempt churches from paying a development charge. Or, a class entirely, so it could be, say, all of industrial. So typically with non-residential, we have, 3 different categories. You have your industrial, institutional, and commercial. If you'd like to exempt industrial, you could do just the industrial and charge everyone else. So there are different ways, council can consider an exemption. If the charge is changing dramatically, or you're going from nothing to something, you may consider a phase in over time. And what that is any, if let's say you're going from 0 to say $10,000, maybe you'd want to phase it in, maybe, 50% now, 100% later, or, 20% per year, or, or some order of magnitude. Again, it's another consideration that is available for council. And then finally, there's also redevelopment credits to recognize what's being replaced on the site. So this isn't part of the Development Charge Act, but it has been part of case law. And what this is if I say burnt my house, not I burnt my house, but my house burnt down, I should be allowed to rebuild my house, within a set period of time and not have to pay development charges. We typically put a cap on that, or a time horizon. So for the bylaw, I believe we put in 5 years, which is the average for most development charge bylaws within Ontario. Because at the end of the day, having at least a time limit, restricts people from coming in, with a picture on their lot, from the early 1900s or late 1800s, saying, I had a house on there, I don't want to pay DCs. So this way it is able to capture that. And with respect to any reductions, you cannot pick it up on the backs of DC on another DC, and it must be funded from other non-DC sources. And what I mean by that is, if you were to exempt industrial, but you still wanted your development charges, well, you cannot, take that decrease in industrial and put it on the backs of residential. Once you make that decrease, you must now fund the reserve funds for the development charges from other sources, such as, your taxes or other reserves or user fees. So you don't have to implement 100% of the charge, but that just means that you now have to pick up the funding of the capital works that we've identified in the study from other sources. Now, in working with staff, the following discretionary exemptions are being provided for council's consideration. So we have included a non-residential farm building, places of worship, non-profit organizations, and any temporary buildings or structures. Now, this is subject to obviously inspections by the building official, but these are the 4 categories right now that are being proposed for an exemption under your proposed development charge bylaw. Now, just to go into the growth forecast, through working with staff and your planners, we took a look at 2 different time horizons, a 10-year and a 20-year period. And as you can see here, as of right now, for your 10-year period going out to 2031, it is estimated that you would have a net population increase of approximately 642 people. And that equals about 233 homes. On the non-residential side, that's about just under 204,000 square feet of non-residential building space. On a 20-year horizon, we're estimating a population increase of 826, which is reflective of 307 homes, and roughly 276,000 square feet of non-residential building space. Looking at the growth forecasts on this bar chart, you can see the black is the historical building permit activity that the township has experienced over the last 10 years. You can see on average, you're probably around the 11 or 12 units per year. However, looking at your current development applications, as well as working, with your staff and your external planners, planning firm that assisted in developing your growth forecasts, we're noticing that for the first 10 years, we're potentially going to see an estimated, 20, 23, 24 units per year. And on the latter half of the forecast, dropping to about, an average of 8. Now, what you're seeing on the screen is the dark blue represents low density. So that's your single detached dwellings. If you don't have any medium density, or else that would be represented in a lighter blue color. But you do have some high density that is forecasted in the latter half of the forecast, and that's represented in yellow. So the services and classes of services that we are considering for the development charges are your services related to a highway. So as I said, this is your roads, public works, facilities, and vehicles and equipment. We are looking at your fire services, fire protection services, and then parks and recreation. In terms of a class of service, we are allowed to also recover studies related to these three services. So what the development charge says is we have to just call it, again, that class of service. Doesn't really change any of the calculations. It's just more of a title more than anything. But we also have growth studies so that we can collect for different types of studies that support growth. On your screen is the calculated development charges from the study. As you can see, starting from the left-hand side, we have singles and semi-detached dwellings. The calculated charge right now is about $12,368 per unit. And then going from left to right, we're actually going to, from a bigger to smaller unit. So then we have your multiples, which are more your townhomes or row dwellings. So that's about $8,181 per unit. And then we have three different sets of apartments. So the first one is your apartments, which are larger ones, 2 bedrooms or greater. And that's about just over $7,800. Your 1 bedroom and bachelor apartments are just over $4,900. And then we have a category called special care, special dwelling units. And that's really to recognize more, say retirement homes or any type of special homes that have some specialized care or specialized, caretaking, for more of the aged population. And we're looking at that from a per unit or per bed basis. And that typically reflects about just over $4,200 per unit. And then we have your non-residential charge, which we do have one uniform charge for all three non-residential types, your industrial, commercial, and institutional, at $3 per square foot. And if you recall from the previous slide with your proposed discretionary exemptions, if you were a church or a farm building, then you would not be subject to this charge. And again, these are all for new units only. And then we finally get to the rate survey. So we just wanted to provide you a perspective of your charge relative to your neighbors and others. So as you can see, with this calculation, you would be, the third last on this comparator scale, with the larger ones being Wilmot, Woolwich, Thames Center, Middlesex Center, etc. And then, the ones underneath you would be Malahide and West Perth. Just to explain the chart a little bit, the blue represents your charge, so the lower tier. The gold or yellow is the upper tier charge, if applicable. And then the orange is the education VCs. So under the province, they also have under the Education Act, they actually do have the ability to impose development charges on their end. You don't have one in your municipality. So as you can see here, this is where your charges would be if the full charge was imposed. With respect to the non-residential, we typically look at commercial and industrial. So what you're seeing on the screen here is your commercial charge. Again, based on your peers and on this comparator list, you would be about third last, just in front of, fourth last, just in front of Stratford, North Perth, and West Perth. And then with the highest being, again, Wilmot at around the $30 mark. And then you got London, again, the Woolwich, Strathroy, Caradoc, etc. And then finally on the industrial, you could see a lot of the municipalities do discount their industrial, or some even don't impose it at all, such as Woodstock, Ingersoll, Stratford, and West Perth. However, if you were to impose your $3 per square foot, again, with those that do impose it, you would be second last. If you're looking at it from the totality, then you'd be, I guess, sixth from the bottom. And finally, just to recap, we are going to be bringing the draft bylaw for council's consideration on November 7th. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Byron. Is there any questions or comments from members of council before I open up to the gallery? Councillor Clark.
Thanks for the presentation, Byron. I don't know if this question is directed at you or staff. I noticed on page 101, there's mention of a pumper tanker upgrade and a satellite 1-bay fire hall. So is that just proposed, or is it, this is the first I've heard about it?
Yeah, so some of those items is looking at where we see Adelaide Metcalfe in 10 years, looking down the road. So something like that was looked at for along Highway 81 as a possible situation to address some fire response times and whatnot. But again, nothing on that list is a commitment. After 5 years, it gets reassessed. And if we don't do those works, I believe the DC is recalculated. Correct me if I'm wrong, Byron.
Yes, through your worship, as Johnny had pointed out, yes, the DCs are recalculated every 5 years, depending on what capital projects or what type of spending has occurred or will be proposed to be incurred for the next DC study process. And as Johnny had said, with respect to these projects, it is looking at a 20-year outlook. So based on the growth forecast, these were potentially the projects that potentially could be considered. Now, one of the things is any projects that are within the development charge study, although the study itself is blessed by council, staff will still need to get approval for each individual project on an annual basis through your budgeting process. So any projects that are on here do still need to get your final approval on a year-by-year basis.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
Yeah, I guess a little bit more on the actual workings of it. So when we collect development charges, are the amounts allocated for fire or roads or park and rec, are they just put into a reserve for those specific items, or does that money sit in the general account?
Great question. Through your worship, for the collections of your development charges. So for example, let's take your singles for at that $12,300 amount. We had calculated what portion is made up of roads versus fire versus parks and rec, and then the studies. Should the bylaw be passed, it is our recommendation that a reserve fund be established for each of those categories. And as building permits are pulled and development charges are paid, that $12,300 amount will then be split up into the categories that it belongs to, which can then be used for the capital that is intended for.
Okay, thank you. It doesn't look like there's any other questions from members of council. Is there any one in the gallery wishing to speak to the proposed development charges? Doesn't look like anybody's jumping up and down. All right. So if there's nothing further, I'd like to thank you, Byron, for the presentation. And will you be back here on the 7th, or is that going to be Johnny or somebody looking at else after that? Be Johnny? Perfect. Okay, well, it's been great working with you, and thank you for all of the work on this.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Okay, thanks. So with that, we need to have a motion that the 2022 development charges public meeting presentation be received. Mover and seconder. Okay, Councilor McKinnon and Deputy Mayor Hendricks. All those in favor? And that's carried. And if there is nothing further, then we need to have a motion to adjourn the public meeting at 7:40. Okay, Councillor Brody and Deputy Mayor Hendricks. All those in favor? And that's carried. So we will move into the Committee of Adjustment. We need a motion that council convene as the Committee of Adjustment for the purpose of hearing application for consent B11-2022 at 7:41. Okay, Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Clark, all those in favor, and that is carried. So before we get into that, I'll just say that the purpose. We got a noise in the council chamber. I'm not sure. Aaron, can you hear that? No. I'll continue with the statement. The purpose of the following public hearing for Adelaide Metcalfe Committee of Adjustment is to give the members of council, give the members of the Committee of Adjustment, as well as the general public, an opportunity to hear all interested persons with respect to the application before the committee this evening. The public is advised that comments expressed in written material presented are a matter of public record available for full disclosure. And if a person or a public body files an appeal of decision made this evening to the Ontario Land Tribunal without having made a written submission to the committee and or council, the tribunal may dismiss the appeal. And if you wish to be notified of the decision in writing, please submit a written request to the clerk. And we have Peter Brown with us. If you would you like to, do you want Peter to come to the seat there? Sure. So if you want to come to the between Johnny and Coulter, that'd be excellent. Or we'll get Coulter over there. There we go.
Welcome to the table.
Yeah, thank you.
And what we'll do is we'll have Aaron, she'll go through the report. And then if you have any questions or anything, Coulter will push that button for you so then everybody can hear you. All right, so I'll hand it over to Aaron to go through the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering, Mike, if I'm able to share my screen just for the location map.
Oh, yes.
You should have power now, Aaron.
Thank you so much. Okay. I think I have too many windows open here. Oh boy. There we go. Sorry about that. So the only application before committee this evening is B11-2022. It is looking to permit the severance of a residence from a larger farm parcel, which has been deemed surplus to the needs of the farming operation. The subject property in total is approximately 30.4 hectares in size. It's located on the north side of Scotchmere Drive between Mayfair and Springfield Road. So the applicant has requested the lot to be severed, which is 5764 Scotchmere Drive. They're looking for a frontage of 75 meters, a depth of 100 meters, with an approximate lot area of 0.75 hectares in size. The lands proposed to be severed contain an existing single detached dwelling, which was constructed in 1898. It is privately serviced with an individual septic system and well, and the lands proposed to be severed also include an existing access onto Scotchmere Drive, which is under the jurisdiction of the township. So I do want to note that you can see in the location map, there are a number of accessory structures, not only on the severed lot, but on the retained lot as well. But I can confirm that those have all been removed by the landowner. So it is currently just the single detached dwelling with the access that is remaining at this time. So the subject lands are within the agricultural designation of our official plan and the general agriculture A zone of our zoning bylaw. The application was circulated as per the requirements of the Planning Act. The drainage superintendent advised that the property is within the watershed of 2 drains. So as a condition of approval, the applicant will need to have a drainage reassessment carried out by our engineer with all costs borne by the applicant. The chief building official advised that the septic system will need to be confirmed to be wholly contained on the severed lot. He also indicated that the severed and retained parcels should be cleared of any debris which would not meet the property standards bylaw, which would include, he identified metals and materials, but I will also identify like the crushed concrete from the previous structures and that sort of thing. We're also looking for an address sign to be placed on the retained parcel, and the dwelling would need to be confirmed to be habitable. The manager of public works advised of no concerns as both the severed and retained lots have access off of Scotchmere Drive. The CA also did not have any concerns and no comments were received from the public. So the PPS, county official plan and local official plan generally permit lot creation to dispose of a dwelling surplus to a farming operation. I am satisfied that farm consolidation has been achieved in this case, in that the subject lands form part of a farming operation of at least five holdings with approximately 190 hectares and 3 additional farm dwellings. The surplus dwelling itself, again, meets the age criteria as it was constructed prior to January 1st of 1999. The only item that I wish to really bring up with this application is my recommendation has been identified to be slightly smaller in lot size than what is being requested. So one of the eligibility criteria is that the severed lot be made as small as necessary to accommodate the house at the appropriate servicing, and that no lands be taken out of production. So looking at the location map, you can see that there's a large piece just north of the severed lot, which is being brought into production eventually. So the lands have been cleared and will be staying with the farm parcel itself. But there is quite a significant sort of portion on either side of the existing sort of grassed portion. So just in an effort to maintain as much agricultural land in production as possible, I've recommended that the frontage be reduced from 75 meters to 64 meters, which would reduce the amount taken out of production, and it would actually equal the amount that is being put back in production. So my recommendation is based on sort of a net zero farmland loss concept. So with my recommendation, the frontage, like I said, would be 63 meters with a lot area from the requested 0.75 hectares to 0.63 hectares. Like I said, the accessory buildings have all been removed, and I have added the condition of approval that the debris be removed from the site. And similar to all surplus farm dwelling severances, the applicant will be required to submit a rezoning application to limit the uses on the severed lot, as well as prohibit residential use on the severed, the retained piece as well. So my recommendation this evening is for approval, subject to the 12 conditions outlined in my report, all of which are standard for these types of severances, aside from number 6, which is that the frontage of the severed lot be reduced to 63 meters in length, and number 7, that all materials and debris, including remnant concrete, be removed from both the severed and retained lands, so that the property is in conforming to our property standards bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. At this time, Peter, do you have anything you'd like to add at all, or any comments?
I'm in agreement with everything she said. The only thing is, the reason the size was kind of taken was to provide Clay enough room to put a geothermal and septic system in. So reducing it may affect his ability to put in geothermal.
And if I can say one thing, on the lot, on the map picture, you guys can see up there to the right of the laneway, you can see where there's a small portion of farmland there. That will not becoming lawn or grass or anything. That's gonna stay farmland. So if we leave it the size that it actually is right now, that's the proposed drawing, it will be removing 0.13 acres of farmland. So it's not very much because it's not gonna come out of the right side at all. It's just gonna be widthening it a little bit to the left to allow for my geothermal and the room for the new septic system that I have a permit for and got approved, and not to interfere with the main drain that runs through there.
Okay, thank you for clarification. Can you just state your name and address for?
Yeah,
clerk's
my name
record?
is Clay Stevenson, and I live at 5691 Scotchmere Drive, right across the road.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I did have one
Oh.
other question, Aaron, regarding.
Yeah.
Oh,
There you go.
there we are. I did have one other question for Aaron regarding the drainage. I believe that your drainage person said there was 2 drains. I'm curious where the second one is, on the whole farm or on the lot?
Through your worship, to the applicant, to be honest, I haven't seen the drainage map itself. It is just a comment that was indicated to me. We can certainly look into it and provide you with that information tomorrow.
Yeah, that whole area where the property is, it's gonna be severed. There's only one drain that's going to, yeah.
Okay, and if certainly if that's the case, the engineers who do the evaluation will indicate exactly what needs to be identified and reapportioned. So
Yeah.
despite what was said previously, we will make sure that it's
Yeah,
accurate.
yeah, because all that water goes out one drain, right? Yeah, it's visible on there. So, thank you.
They gotta be considering the drilling rig down the other side to it.
Yeah, that,
Okay, so is there anyone in the gallery wishing to speak to the this application at all? All right, is there any questions or comments from the committee of adjustment? Councilor McKinnon, you just push your button there.
It happens here too.
It's contagious.
Yes, on the application, you show the future site at the front, towards the front of the house, is that correct? So then, am I correct in understanding that the thermal tile will run down that portion that used to be agriculture land?
Yes, so if you look at the drawing, you can see a hydro pole right at the front of the property there. The municipal drain is right there.
Okay,
And then there's the main tile that runs across on an angle. And then the septic will be coming just back from that, kind of halfway between the front right corner of the property and the house. Because I have to keep it back, and there's the well at the back corner of the house. So that leaves me the only place that I can put in the geothermal furnace for the runs would be in that back right corner.
Yeah.
In order to keep it farther enough away to not interfere with drain and tiles and be far enough from the wells that wouldn't contaminate it. There wouldn't be leak ever.
okay, thank you.
Councilor Brody?
Yeah, I have no problem leaving it at 75 meters to put that in. I put a geothermal and I know how wide it takes, so he needs room for it. So if you cut him back, I mean, he's gonna get into ripping out lawn, trees, whatever. I mean, we're parting hairs at 65 meters to 75 meters, really. So, yeah.
Is there any other questions or comments from the committee of adjustment? Okay. Seeing none, so we have the recommendation in front of us, and that has the 12 conditions, but I believe we're looking at condition number 6 is what is being indicated that we would like to just fully remove that, I'm assuming. And that condition is that the frontage of the severed lot be reduced to 63 meters in length to the satisfaction of the township. So I'm looking from a member of, so Councillor Clark and Councillor McKinnon, and that is for approval with all the conditions as stated, but with removal of condition number 6 as applied. Perfect. Okay, so that was moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you so much. And we'll see you, well, I won't see you, but somebody will see you back here. Or we'll see you back here for the zoning bylaw amendment. so we need to have a motion of council that we end the it's here somewhere, I thought, that we go back into our council meeting and end the committee of adjustment. Okay, Councillor Brody and Councillor McKinnon, all those in favor, and that's carried. All right, and you guys can stick around if you want. It is local government week, and if not, I understand. Okay, take care. Okay, so we will go into correspondence, and we have our upcoming conferences, seminars, and meetings. Our next regular meeting is on November 7th at 7 o'clock, and that will be the last council meeting of this current term of council. And then the next meeting after that is Monday, November 21st at 7 o'clock, and that's the inaugural meeting of council. The Rural Ontario Municipal Association Roma conference is being held between January 22nd and 24th at the Sheridan Center Hotel in Toronto, and I believe that registration is open for that. But we'll only look at Councillor Clark if you want to go to that one so far. Recommended readings. We have the Middlesex County Council highlights from September 27th, and then St. Clair Region Conservation Authority conservation update for October of 2022, and then our October 11th Middlesex County Council highlights. Action required. The first one is a resolution from the municipality of Huron Shores, and it's the streamlining government legislation for physicians in Ontario, and Councillor Clark has declared a conflict on that one. Okay, Councillor McKinnon.
I was for supporting.
Okay.
Having been on the Four Counties Local Advisory Committee has given me an opportunity to learn about the shortages that we are suffering from doctors and nurses, and how, if we're going to keep our emergency rooms open, we need to do something. So I move to support.
Okay, so moved by Councillor McKinnon and then seconded by Deputy Mayor Hendricks. Is there any further discussion at all? Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried. And then the last one there is from the municipality of East Ferris, and it's the childcare shortage. I can't speak. Any thoughts on this one? All right, so it looks like we're going to file items CC 1 through to 3 and number 5. Mover and seconder. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor Clark, all those in favor, and that is carried. We will go into our staff reports, and I'll hand over to our treasurer, Johnny, to go through the operating budget to actual for September 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the council, we have in front of us the September 2022 operating budget to actual report. Overall spending and revenue collection to date looks to be on pace with the approved budget. As you can see there, we've collected most of the revenue for the year. The expenditures are lagging, but after meeting with department managers, we seem to be on pace with the expenses to come. Some are lagging just based on projects and just timing of some of those expenses. So the recommendation is to receive the report as presented. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, is there any questions at all? Okay, seeing none, we need to have a motion that the operating budget to actual report for September 2022 be received for information. Okay, Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, and then back to you, Johnny, for the employee benefits plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the council, the report here is really looking at the township's employee benefits. Adelaide Metcalfe currently uses a RAM insurance administrators to offer their benefit program to full-time staff, and also offers a supplementary internal benefit for additional coverage on eyeglasses and contacts, which is administered by staff. This additional coverage was passed by council in 2015. Although the township does offer a benefit plan, the coverage flexibility and amounts are extremely outdated. As we try to modernize Adelaide Metcalfe, it is important to be competitive in the municipal employee marketplace. Being able to attract and retain staff is becoming a significant challenge, as we're seeing across the province in the past few years. By modernizing our benefits and offering employees flexibility in their use, we're providing employees and future employees a further reason to work at Adelaide Metcalfe. In addition, the benefit review also addressed a current taxable benefit issue with the offering of the internal benefit policy, as it hasn't been administered properly in the past. While improving benefits to be more flexible and focusing on attracting and retaining employees, we want to be able to do this with minimal increase to the current benefit budget. We found the current benefit for dental recall appointments, those are the appointments where the dentist usually comes in the room, are listed as every 6 months. The standard that we're seeing right now is 9 months. So by changing to the industry average, we're seeing a savings of about 4% or $58.73 a month. We also reviewed the extended healthcare benefit, which is where the significant gap was found compared to neighboring municipalities. The extended healthcare coverage is significantly outdated, and it hasn't changed with the rising costs for at least a decade. To remain competitive, we grouped a number of these benefits together to provide employees the flexibility to utilize the benefits that employees and their families could benefit from. The grouping is indicated in the report there. So this grouping of all these benefits would provide or would cost about 8.2% increase or $202 per month. In addition, we're looking to repeal the current supplemental eyeglass and contacts policy that was introduced in 2015. The internal policy, like I said, has not been taxed properly, as it should have been a taxable benefit for employees. This policy is restrictive, as it only provides benefits to those individuals who actually wear glasses. The cost of providing this benefit is currently $7,400 every 2 years, or $37 annually. Again, by focusing on the flexibility for employees and employees' attraction and retention, a healthcare spending account has become a popular option. This benefit would be administered by RAM, our current provider, and the coverages are outlined in the healthcare in the CRA listing there for eligible expenses. The healthcare spending account would provide families a total allotment of $350 a year with a 1 year carry forward. Any unused funds would be returned to the township and could be placed in a benefit reserve. The total cost of that with admin fees would be just over $4,400. So again, by taking account all those changes, so there's some subtraction, some additions, it would cost the township an extra $2,476 for the year. In addition, meetings were held with staff, so admin and roads, to discuss the changes, because there was changes going both ways, just to make sure we had staff buy-in. So we did that, and feedback was positive. In addition, we did look at the short-term disability. That is something we're going to be looking at for the April 1st renewal, as I think there's some other cost-saving opportunities there. So just looking into what options are available, some costing, but I will bring something forward in the new year with that proposal. Yeah, so the recommendation is to approve the report as presented, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. Is there any questions at all? Councilor Brody?
Just a comment. So bringing this back up to more current standards, really, you're probably only about $200 an employee more a year, right? Costing $2,500.
Yes, it's fairly reasonable. Again, it's also based on usage as well. I think we're grouped in with the county program as well, so we're getting favorable rates. But yeah, it's a significant improvement what we were getting before.
Is there any other questions? Councilor Clark?
Well, it's fair to say it's more flexible too, because like you said, not everybody's wearing glasses, right? So the HSA will be better. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, is there any other questions at all? Seeing none, so we have the recommendation in front of us, and that is that the employee benefits plan changes be approved, and further that the internal corrective eyeglasses / contacts benefits policy established on June 1st, 2015 be repealed for the creation of an employee healthcare spending account. Okay, Councilor Brody, seconded by Councilor McKinnon. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you, Johnny. And we're going to move into the Integrity Commissioner and Closed Meeting Investigator appointment. And Mike Arnie is going to take that.
Through the mayor to members of council. You have an informational report with a recommendation for the appointment of a integrity commissioner and closed meeting investigator. So we received Mark McDonald, our previous, he was the closed meeting investigator, integrity commissioner, and municipal ombudsman, as gave us notice that he's terminating the contract as of September 30th, 2022. Now, I should note that we're in a blackout period for any types of these investigations between nomination day, which is August 19th, to voting day, October 24th. So just to explain quickly, integrity commissioner, they conduct the codes of conduct investigations and municipal conflict of interest matters. The closed meeting investigator investigates any closed meeting complaints under section 239 of the Municipal Act. And the municipal ombudsman investigates decision or recommendations or acts done or omitted in the course of administration. So the municipality, although we had Mark McDonald as all three, I think there is potential cost savings if we just nominate for integrity commissioner, which we have to have, and a closed meeting investigator. If we don't nominate the ombudsman, it does go to the provincial. So the recommendations is appoint Aird Bearless as integrity commissioner and closed meeting investigator. So they are currently the integrity commissioner and closed meeting investigator for over 50 municipalities in Ontario, including other public organizations. 3 in Middlesex County, 2 which have just been appointed, Thames Centre and Strathroy. What I will point out, which is a glaring on that, is that the financial details are not included as part of the report. The vendor has claimed third-party information under Section 10 of the Municipal Freedom of Information Protection Act. So competitive. I think we ran into this a little bit with your contract through Animal Services. So, but what I will say on that is that they have gone through the LAS, Local Authority Services. They provide procurement services that have be done through a competitive procurement process. They are the selected vendor, and also for 50 municipalities. Their fees are typical of other legal costs. So there is a retainer agreement, but there's no financial obligations. And it's simply a written request to remove them as integrity commissioner. There's no obligations in that respect. So we are hopeful. It's a bit strange for procurement. We haven't used the service of Mark McDonald or whoever it was before since 2014, from what my understanding is. So you hope that you never have to use this service, but we do need to point one if there is the need. In discussions with John Mascarin of Aird Bearless, he will be providing an education session for council, if appointed, to go over those obligations, and hopefully it's a good education so we don't run into those and pay lawyer fees for investigation. So the recommendation is in front of you. So it's to appoint Aird Bearless as the integrity commissioner and closed meeting investigator, and the enacting bylaw be approved. Happy to answer any questions.
Councilor McKinnon. Okay, so we got a mover, seconder. Councilor Brody, is there any discussion at all? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, and that's carried. And from that to something more fun, we have the outdoor ice rink partnership with the Optimist Club. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, absolutely more fun than ombudsman and all that other stuff. I've been looking forward to bring this report to council for a little over probably a year and a half now. We were hoping to get something done before last winter, but given that the park was under construction, all those other good things, the timing just didn't seem correct. But we're here now. So as council knows, we've made significant investment into Kerwood Park, and council wants to see some new uses and that park be as busy as it can all year round. So one of the first things I heard from the community when I came to the township was this outdoor rink. We used to have one and we need one again. So I said to Curtis and this individual that I'll do my best to find a way to make that happen. So I think just the passage of time changes liabilities, risks, insurance issues. So one of the big things that we did was work with our legal folks to manage those risks and work with our insurance folks to identify and cover off our liability. One of the greatest things about this opportunity is the partnership with our Optimist Club. So absolutely looking forward to working with our Optimist Club to bring this service to the township. In front of council today is an agreement that essentially just outlines the roles and responsibilities of the township and the Optimist Club, where really the township will provide the space for the outdoor rink and will purchase the outdoor rink, and then the Optimist Club will operate and maintain that rink. In some cases, we'll have to worry about winter maintenance for the parking lot, a couple shovels under the pavilion probably, but otherwise we don't really foresee a large impact on the township. But of course, we'll monitor the service and the program as it goes forward. So in saying that, happy to provide council with the agreement and there's a recommendation there to accept it and have it signed, I think.
Is there any questions at all? Councillor Clark and then Councillor McKinnon.
I was just going to inquire, it's really nice to have the Optimists take the lead in this. And I know from my past experience in working with the municipality, and my question to John is, if the Optimists through agreement enter into, say, the pickleball court or a splash pad, we as a municipality can then issue tax receipts, can we not, to the people that give donations towards that project?
Providing, I would have to look into the details of that, to be honest. I could guess right now, but I'll give you a straight answer if you like.
Okay,
Yeah.
I know with the Rotary Club in Glencoe, we were able to do that with the train station. So I'm hoping that we could do it with this, and it provides a little bit more incentive if you're getting a tax receipt for a donation.
Okay, so we do have a mover, Councillor Clark, for this. Do we have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Brody, all those in favor, and that's carried. All right, so that will bring us to our closed session, but before we do that, we will go into other business, just because we have some folks in the gallery. Is there anything that council members would like to bring up under other business? Okay, Councillor McKinnon.
I just wondered, Mayor Curtis, if you have been able to, through the county, push against the railway in regards to the Kerwood tracks.
So through the mayor to Councilor McKinnon. So we have been chatting with CN and the county. There are a couple challenges with those tracks, given that they're on a curve. So one side needs to be higher than the other. The way that the road, I understand, as it was constructed, would need to be brought up in a significant way. So one way of really looking at the tracks as they are today is they are kind of a traffic calming solution for big trucks or otherwise cars coming through the village. So I did reach out to Ryan Hillinger of the county as well, because you made a good comment about whether or not there are signs available or that would identify rough tracks. So to get back to me on that, I haven't driven by the tracks myself in the last couple of weeks to see if that sign's there, but so, and then of course, speaking with CN, it's a pretty expensive endeavor to change those tracks. We would likely be better off actually changing the location of the crossing, which is a challenge as well.
Okay, is there anything else for other business at all? Okay, seeing none, then we will have that motion to go into closed session at 8:15 p.m. and that's under section 239(2)(e) of the Municipal Act, and that is to discuss the servicing agreement between Adelaide Metcalfe and Strathspey Caradoc. Mover and seconder to go into closed, Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor Brody.